A new whistleblower complaint is alleging that top Department of Homeland Security officials, appointees, repeatedly instructed officials to modify intelligence assessments pertaining to national security risks. Now, as we've been talking about on this show quite a bit, is the prevalence of right-wing extremism, right-wing radical attacks against individuals. We've been seeing this play out in parts of the country, including Portland, Oregon, where Black Lives Matter demonstrators have been attacked by right-wingers. And so this whistleblower report is essentially saying that Trump appointees have pressured the Department of Homeland Security, have pressured the intelligence community to completely change the narrative, the evidence of what's really going down in this country and which groups of people pose the biggest security risks. So the DHS Secretary Chad Wolf and Acting Director of US Citizenship and Immigration, Ken Cuccinelli, both Trump appointees, directed officials to change intelligence assessments based on Trump's political rhetoric and order the whistleblower says amounted to an abuse of authority. So both Wolf and Cuccinelli also tried to alter a report to downplay the threat posed by white supremacists and instead emphasize the role of leftist groups due to concerns about how the initial language would reflect on the president. So we all see what's been going on in this country with our own eyes. We've seen multiple viral videos of armed militia members. Kyle Rittenhouse was one of those teenaged armed militia members who gunned down 2 protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, for instance. And so while we see that imagery, we also deal with a president who tells us that we're facing a risk by anarchists and Antifa, right? So it just doesn't make sense. As a result, Trump's appointees are like, oh, we know what we're gonna do. We're just going to pressure and force the intelligence community to lie about what the real national security threat is in this country. And apparently it upset Brian Murphy. Brian Murphy is the whistleblower here. You may recall from earlier stories that he's a former DHS Inspector General who stepped down when he realized just how authoritarian this administration is and just how damaging Donald Trump has been to our democratic process. So the allegations were raised in this complaint filed by Murphy to the DHS Inspector General. According to the source, Murphy previously oversaw the intelligence division at the department, but was reassigned this summer after it was revealed his office had gathered intelligence reports on 2 journalists. Murphy says that he refused to modify the intelligence assessments so that they more closely aligned with Trump's anti-Antifa rhetoric. So basically he said, no, I'm not gonna do this. Murphy also said that he refused to alter draft versions of the report, warning of the national security threat posed by white supremacists. So I'm gonna show you some of the changes that were proposed and I don't know what kind of fallout there's likely to be in a story like this. I think that people who have been concerned about right-wing extremists will continue to be concerned. But I think that Trump supporters consist of these people and will continue to support Trump because he empowers them, he supports them, he defends them. I mean, just today, Donald Trump Jr. gave an interview where he just totally defended Kyle Rittenhouse and said, yeah, we all do stupid things when we're
boys will be boys. And we've always kind of laughed. There's like that ongoing joke about like, oh, I'm the president of Antifa. No, I'm the president of Antifa. Like where it's like, it's not like it's not like a real big kind of meaningful thing, but it just gets played up in these right-wing fantasies of like this kind of this kind of like violent, organized institution that's going to overthrow all of society or something like that. But this just shows that even our own intelligence communities, which don't need a whole lot of encouragement to play up left-wing threats, like even them, they don't see that as a credible threat. Like this is the same people that used to, the intelligence communities that used to be obsessed with like the Black Panthers and things like that. Like it's not, there's a long history of the intelligence communities within the United States being obsessed with left-wing groups, and even them, they're not kind of that fussed about Antifa, and it's only because of political pressure that they have to play up these intelligence gather. I mean, this reminds me of like in Dick Cheney when he used to like tell the intelligence agencies like, no, but look, Iraq, the nuclear weapons, they got them, and like would totally pressure the intelligence agencies to filter out information that disproved that theory, and only highlighted information that strengthened that theory. And so, yeah,
well, what's really weird is so lately, as we've been seeing more and more of these armed militias rain terror on demonstrators, I've been looking at the statistics because the FBI, and we're not talking about the FBI here, we're talking about the intelligence division within the Department of Homeland Security. So that is separate from the FBI, but the FBI had been putting out reports warning people about the serious threat and a growing threat of right-wing extremism in this country. And as I was researching for a recent story, I noticed that I was having difficulty finding those reports. They were previously super easy to find. So I don't know if there's anything going on with the FBI. I mean, I have to do more digging into that. But I certainly do agree with you when it comes to how DHS has been operating under the Trump administration, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, DHS had a specific unit dedicated to combating right-wing terrorism in this country, right-wing radicals and armed militias. And conservatives made such a big deal about it that in 2009, under the Obama administration, he agreed to finally disband that particular unit. I really wish he hadn't given into that pressure. I don't know why he did, but there are consequences to it. And I think we're seeing some of those consequences right now. So Murphy, by the way, first argued that Cuccinelli, then Wolf, pushed back against changes to the draft version of the report that would have watered down language pertaining to white supremacists and added additional information about leftist groups like those the Trump administration has portrayed as a top threat to the US ahead of the November presidential election. When Murphy refused to implement the changes as directed, Cuccinelli and Wolf stopped the report from being finished. So they're like, okay, well, who cares about this intelligence report if we can't just use it for our own propaganda purposes? Now there were some proposed changes, so I'm gonna show you what some of those changes were. The earliest available version of the State of the Homeland Threat Assessment 2020 draft reads, we judge that ideologically motivated lone offenders and small groups will pose the greatest terrorist threat to the homeland through 2021, with white supremacist extremists presenting the most lethal threat. That was the original version. Here's what the proposal was. The lead section on terror threats to the homeland is changed in the latter two drafts to replace white supremacist extremists with domestic violent extremists presenting the most persistent and lethal threat. So they just got rid of the white supremacist part of it, which I would argue is incredibly relevant. I mean, think about it. People who were like, why don't you say radical Islamic terrorism? Why won't you say it? You have to say it. In our own reports, they're like, let's erase white supremacy. We don't want that in there. It's just sick, but this is what you can expect from the Trump administration.
Well, it's also just like, it's so transparent, right? What's going on is that Trump has probably made the correct calculus that anything that doesn't, that distracts from the pandemic and kind of whips people into a frenzy about a perceived threat coming from the Democrats, right? Because that's the other hilarious thing. It's like where he ties like Antifa to the Democratic Party, which is just like, could it be, they couldn't be farther apart. But anything that can, from an electoral standpoint, that can get in people's minds thinking like, oh, like if the Democrats come, we're just gonna have these, hoodie wearing, Molotov cocktail throwing guys on the street raining chaos. That's their only hope for the election, because if the election is about the coronavirus and the economic collapse that came as a result of that, they will lose. Can they play up threats? Can they play up China? Can they play up Antifa enough in people's minds to get them to be scared of disorder and of some vague foreign threat? Then they maybe have a chance.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.